Alright, well, I'm glad you're still with me. This second video, a really good title might be the great news and the horrible news. Nothing fancy, but this is going to be pretty radical. I'm going to share some very controversial thoughts with you. And you may be offended. If you love the industry as much as I do, just keep in mind, I've been in the sign industry 12 years. I love it. I'm passionate about it. But I see where we've got it wrong. And I see the fact that we're sitting on a diamond mine chasing nickels. And I really want to help you see as much of the opportunity so you can make the most educated decision yourself possible about what's available to you. Alright, the background of our industry as I see it, I do not know of another industry on the planet that does as many things counterproductively or just plain wrong as we do in the sign industry. Now, just so you can get a perspective of where I'm really coming from, I have spent the last 12 years consulting with people in over 100 different industries. I've been around the block a couple times, and as I've already stated, I've created over $150 million in sales business increases for my clients in multiple industries across the board. Now, something magical happens to a guy. I'm not some super genius, it has nothing to do with that. It's just that when anybody, myself or anybody else, gets to work in a dozen or more industries and they've got their eyes open and their thinking caps on, you begin to notice what you could call x-ray vision into how industries operate. You know, I guess it's like as a musician, if you play multiple instruments, sooner or later you get a deeper insight into music than the guy who just plays sax or just plays drums maybe. And that's my old musician career talking. When you work in business in multiple industries, though, you begin to notice principles that are universal from industry to industry, and you also get to notice practices where people are either working in harmony with those principles or they're not. And having worked in over 100 industries, I got a secret for you, and here's the big secret, okay? There are practices that in, let's say, the automotive industry, just for an example, and we'll call it practice X, Y, and Z, three different fields of knowledge in the automobile industry. Well, it's as common as dirt in the auto industry. Everybody in the industry knows these things, so everybody uses these practices. But in another industry, perhaps it evolved completely independently over the course of a decade, 2, 3, 4 decades. No cross-pollination of professionals in these two industries. So in this other industry, nobody knows about X or Y, and they only partly understand Z. Okay? Now here's where the magic comes in. You go into this other industry and you get to be an expert at X, Y, and Z, and you bring it over and you implement it in this industry where nobody is aware of it, your company immediately skyrockets to #1, period. That is where some of the greatest breakthroughs in the history of business have actually occurred. Okay? Well, again, I've worked in over 100 industries over the course of 12 years, created a lot of business and learned a lot of things. And what I have found is that there's probably not an industry on planet Earth that is operating as blind to its opportunity as the sign industry. And we're going to go into the how and the why more later, but let's just do a kind of a quick survey. Okay? The sign industry is an accidental survey. Ask 50 signage professionals, did you go to school to be in the sign industry? You'll never get a yes. Did you study to be a signage professional? You'll never get a yes. Now, if you ask a doctor or a lawyer or any type of professional, they're going to say, well, of course I went to X university. Okay? We don't have that in the sign industry. We are an accidental industry. We came into being because people who owned real businesses needed signage. And so we found out, well, this guy can make a sign, this guy can weld, this guy can do some electrical work. Next thing you know, we string together a ragtag business which we call a sign company. We don't necessarily understand marketing, how to proactively create business that is favorable to us. We don't necessarily understand how to create sales strategies. And frankly, if your phone rings 20 times a day with people wanting to buy stuff, and you're happy selling cheap, why get good at sales? Well, I'll tell you why. Because I typically close 9 out of 10 of my presentations that I make, and I make several $1,000s every time I make a sale on a large system. That's why. Okay, so there's kind of the thumbnail view of the sign industry's evolution. We'll get deeper in a few minutes here, but I'm going to make a kind of a teaser thought here, because I believe that when I share some of these radical thoughts, I believe that you probably already have your own sneaking suspicions about some of them. You've wondered in the back of your mind, though no expert ever came out, or sign industry guru, we don't have many of those, no one's ever really dumped this information out for public consumption, but here you go. First and foremost, everything we do in the sign industry other than manufacturing and installing, other than that, we've got almost everything else wrong. From hiring to training to acquiring salespeople, the lifeblood of any organization, to keeping those salespeople happy, to marketing ourselves proactively, to controlling our bottom line through the ability to proactively create a sales increase. We're doing just about everything wrong. I don't know how many classes on effective signage design you've ever been through, but if I were the king of the sign industry, nobody'd be able to start their first day of business without that being their first class. These are the kind of things where there's just an absolute vacuum of training. Second, I don't believe there's another industry in the history of business, let alone a multi-billion-dollar business, that is as desperate for real leadership and guidance as our industry. And third, I don't believe there's another multi-billion-dollar industry on the earth where the people running it are so blind to the multi-billion-dollar opportunity lying in front of them. If you could look out at your town with my eyes today and see the millions and millions of dollars in business that is waiting for a proactive, professional, visionary sign professional to begin marketing and selling proactively. If you could see it, I just hope you're sitting down when you get that vision, and I'm going to do my best to transplant that vision into your mind. Okay? Now, why would I say all these things? What does this matter? Okay, well, they say that in the land, and I mean no offense to anyone who is challenged or disabled in any way, but these are a couple sayings that are popular in our society. In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. And in the land of the legless, the one-legged man wins every race. Okay? There are some people in our industry who are not necessarily leaders. Sorry. There are some people in our industry that are not necessarily geniuses, but who have achieved much higher success than the average, simply because they're a more solid person, more integrity, better work ethic. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about incremental growth or you having to transform yourself as a person to be able to achieve this bounty that's available to us in the industry. That's not where I'm going, okay? Now, let's take a look at you and your operation and where we stand for a moment. If you're like 99% of the sign companies in the world, you're operating with absolutely no real marketing strategy, period. And I mean nothing but respect to Signorama corporate. Simple fact of the matter is that for decades now, the signage industry evolved without any of this knowledge. It didn't need it. We cutthroat on price. We may have an edge on quality or not, and we either get the deal or we lose it to the next guy. That's not my paradigm. That's not where I'm coming from. But you also are operating without any real sales system, sales strategy. I'm not talking about putting monthly projections on the board, because a monthly projection on the board where you don't have a systematic way to guarantee you meet those numbers, that's no strategy. That's numbers on a board. Okay? So to kind of back away from this and look at it with fresh eyes, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story, where I'm coming from, and where I see the vision of the sign industry headed, what's potential. That's coming up in the next video. Look forward to seeing you probably about 3 or 4 inches below this video. Thanks again.